Hi, my name is Arun Prakash Kalyamurthy. I go by Arun. I have been with SAP Ariba for 6 years now, and I'm a technical leader on the downstream deployment services. So when any customer purchases downstream solution such as P2P, I help them understand the technical aspect of the product, help them in understanding the integration of P2P with their ERP and other in-house systems. Today I'm going to talk about customer admin capabilities. It's easier to show something as a demonstration instead of walking through presentation. So let's get started here. I just have my Firefox fired up. I'm just going to log in into one of the site as a customer admin. Okay. Just give me a minute here. So you would log in as any other user as the customer admin into the system. So you might have single sign-on or you might not, in which case you would be just using the Ariba traditional login mechanism like I'm doing right now. Once you log in, this will be your home screen. If any user who belongs to the customer administrator group would be able to carry out the customer admin responsibilities or activities. The way you get to the core screen of customer admin is by going into manage and clicking on core administration. So if you are a customer admin, this is where you may end up spending a lot of time here. So what this page allows you to do is basically control all the different manager screens. So on the left navigation panel, you can see site manager, integration manager, user manager, supplier manager, commodity code, P cards, invoicing. So there's a whole list of managerial things that you can do as a customer admin. Now understand that as a customer admin, you have a lot of power on the site. What it also means that you can do a lot of damages. So you need to be very careful in what you're doing. At the same time, need to be careful in distributing the customer admin group permissions to user. As a recommendation, we say that you should not have more than 3 customer admins, but there is no real restriction in terms of how many users can you assign to customer admin group. Just that if there are too many users, it will look like too many cooks in the kitchen, and you will lose track of who is responsible for what and who is doing what. So let me just walk you through the most commonly used managerial screens or admin activities that you would do on the P2P site. Okay, the very first one is at the very top. It's the data import and export. This is the place where you are going to load all the data into P2P or extract all the data from P2P. So you can see here there are 2 tabs, import and export. Everything is from the perspective of P2P. So import would mean import data into P2P. So you're loading the data into P2P. Export would mean export data out of P2P. So you're extracting the data out of P2P, and that data would get consumed by your ERP or some other system. Okay. So if you see, let's look at the most commonly used import task. One of the most commonly used one is import batch data. So this one takes care of loading all the data into the system. If you have multiple objects that needs to be created in Ariba, you can invoke import batch data, provide a zip file that contains all the different files that needs to be loaded, and system will just load those data into P2P. One thing about import batch data, you need to be very sensitive with what is the name of the file that you're using, because the name of the file dictates what import activity is going to be invoked in P2P. And one way to find out what are the supported file names is to just click on view supported files, and you would be able to see what are the different file names that you need to use. So each one of these files can also be loaded individually. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But these are the different files, and there's a short description. The description is not lengthy, but the name of the file is good enough to understand what is it that you're loading. For example, plan.csv will mean that you're loading all the plans into P2P. Purchasing units would mean that you're loading the purchasing units. Remittance location would mean that you're loading the remittance locations of the suppliers into Ariba. Okay, so that's that. And here you would have noticed that there are three options here. My best recommendation is, when in doubt, when you don't know what you're doing, just go with the default. One of the options will be selected by default. Stick with the default and you will be in a safe situation. But let me just explain what full load, incremental load, and deactivate means. So full load means you are going to load the data that would basically deactivate every record in Ariba and load whatever you are sending in. For example, say suppose Ariba P2P today contains 1000 cost center records, and now you're going to go ahead and load a cost center file that contains 200 records. And if you load the cost center in a full load fashion, the system will deactivate the 1000 records of cost center and load the 200 records that you're sending in on the file. So the full load can be translated into deactivate and load. So deactivate whatever that exists in the Ariba P2P and load whatever you're sending in. That's what it means. Incremental load, on the other hand, is create or update. It is not going to deactivate anything. Okay, so going back to the same example, if you have 1000 cost center records in the system and you're going to load a file of 200 records in incremental load fashion, then it is just going to create or update the 200 records that you're sending in. It's not going to do any kind of deactivating activity on the existing records. And deactivate option, on the other hand, means that it is just going to deactivate. It's not going to load, it's not going to create, it's not going to update anything, just deactivate. One thing about Ariba systems is that there is never a delete of data in the system, meaning you are never going to get rid of the data. For example, if you have a cost center, say 123, and you want to get rid of it from being used on the transactions, then you're just going to deactivate the cost center. So 123 will continue to exist in the system, in the database, but it will not be available for the users to use. That is achieved by using a soft delete mechanism. There is a flag called as active. Whenever you deactivate, the active flag turns from true to false, and it will no more be available on the user interface to be used for transactions. Okay. All right. Now that was about batch data. There are individual imports for each of the object that can be used in Ariba. So for example, if you want to look at users, then if you look at users, then I can go ahead and load a user consolidated file. This is an individual import. The one that we saw earlier was batch import, meaning you're going to send a group of files and system is going to find out the corresponding import task based on the file name and is going to run the import. But sometimes you don't want to do batch load. You know what you're loading. Maybe you're trying to just create a couple of users, in which case you have the user file, you just want to load them, so just come in here, invoke the import user data, and then when you click on import, you will get to this screen, and you can just browse and select the file that you want to load, and boom, your file is uploaded into the system. Now if you notice, there are different options here compared to the batch load. Again, if you don't know what option to choose, stick with the default. The most commonly used options on this screen are load and deactivate. Load would mean create or update, and deactivate means deactivate. Now in this case, whenever you are using the file name is not necessary to match what is required. It says enter the location of user consolidated.csv. The actual file name is user consolidated.csv, but if you have named it differently, that's okay, no problem, because we are going after the individual task. The file name can be anything you like. But if you're using the import batch data, you need to make sure that your user file is named user consolidated.csv. Otherwise, the user import will not get invoked. Okay. All right. Let's see what other options we have. That's pretty much the options when it comes to importing data. So let's see what we have for exports. Similar to imports, each and every individual object will have an export activity. One thing to note, like how we have import batch data, there is no export batch data. You have to go after individual exports. So if you want to export say cost centers, all you need to do is look for cost center and hit on the export, and it will give you all the cost centers from the system. Okay, if I hit OK, it's just going to export all the cost centers that exist in this site. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. But remember, what we are exporting is a master data file. You also have the ability to export export all the transactional information from P2P. This is the exported cost center file. So these are all the active cost centers in the system. So you can see there are around 495 records here. Okay. Like I said, you can also export the transactions. For example, you may have purchase order and you want to export it. One thing to note about transactional exports are that it looks for a timestamp, because you don't want to export all the purchase order at all times. So it gives you the option to export the transactions between specific period of time. So that's your from timestamp and the to timestamp. So if you provide the from and to, it is going to give you all the purchase order that are eligible to be exported out between the timestamp that you have provided. Okay. All right. That's all. That's what we have on this screen. You also have the option of downloading the data dictionary. So data dictionary, one liner or a two liner summary is data dictionary basically controls or gives you information of all the import and the export tasks that's available on the site. It's tailored to the specific site that you're working on, and it gives you, it's more like a Bible to a developer who wants to build out the integration between P2P and your ERP. So whenever you run the download data dictionary, it is going to automatically generate the data dictionary based on the all the objects that exist in P2P. Okay. Sometimes this may take a while depending upon how heavy your site is. So let me just open this in Excel. All right, coming up. There you go. So if you go towards the end of this worksheets here, you will see indexes. The indexes lists out all the different import tasks, gives you the export. It's alphabetically arranged, so it gives you all the export tasks followed by all the import tasks, and you can see all the different fields and columns that are being involved in the export and import. For example, let's look at maybe say user. Okay, so let's say the export user. I'm going to show you the import user part, which is what I'm trying to get to. Maybe I should have searched for something better than this. Where do we have import users? Let me search for consolidated. That's better. Okay, import user data consolidated file. So when I click on this, it gives me this file name. It gives me the file name that needs to be involved in the import, and it gives me all the columns that are involved in the file that needs to be imported. And you can notice that it also gives you a field description. Basically, it talks a little bit about what the nature of the field is. It talks about the data type. It talks about if there are any restriction on the length. It gives you some sample values. It talks about whether it's a required field or not. And this file doesn't have too much. Yeah, this does have. So it also talks about the referential integrity. So if there are any referential integrity that needs to be honored in the file, then it talks about those in column N and O. So here you can see we have some supervisors, and we have some billing addresses and expense approval limit or cost centers. So for example, cost center, it says that it needs to match the unique name from the cost center.csv. Similarly, for purchase org, you need to match the value to the unique name column from the purchaseorg.csv file. So it helps a developer understand how the file needs to be structured, what kind of restriction needs to be imposed when they're building out the when they're building out the integration with P2P. Okay, now let's go back to our admin screen. That's the that's the space where you will see a lot of data import and export activities happening. Now, whatever you import via files can be viewed as an administrator from the left navigation panel. For example, if you want to look at all the suppliers that have been loaded, you can just click on the supplier manager, get into the suppliers, and this will bring up a search screen. You can either list all, or you can go ahead and provide some search parameters that will help you narrow down your list. So, and these are all the suppliers that have been loaded into the system, and you can just drill down and look at all the information that exists for these suppliers here. Okay. Same goes for other objects too. If you are loading users, you can go into the user manager, and you should be able to search for all the users in the system. So let's go in. Let's see if we have my user here. I do. Multiple users. I can just click on this user ID. It brings up my user here. I can look at who the supervisor is. I can also look at the group permissions and see what different groups I belong to. You can also edit the users or edit the user information from here. So the actions allows you to edit the information. You can also see there are other options such as act as, log, deactivate, and reset dashboard. One advantage of being a customer admin is that you would be able to act as any particular user, meaning when you do act as, you are acting as that user. You are logging into the system as if you are that particular user, and carry out the operation what the other user would be able to do. Okay, and as a customer admin, you can lock or unlock, activate or deactivate the user records from the system. Okay, so if I click on edit, I will be able to edit most of the information here. If I go into groups, groups basically contain or control what different permissions the users have on the system. What are the different features they can access or not access. Everything is controlled via group permissions. So you can add or remove groups, and that basically will make us users stronger or weaker in the system. Okay, that's about users. Similarly, you can look at the groups individually. So instead of drilling down the users and finding out the groups, you can go after the groups and find out what they can do and who are the different users that they belong to the groups. Okay, so you can see that audit user has these many users in the system. Similarly, let's see what other options you have for the next one that you may end up spending a lot of time is with commodity. So partition commodity codes, also known as ERP commodity codes. These are the commodity codes that represents the categorization of goods and services in ERP. So this one comes from your ERP, gets loaded, and they also need to be mapped with the UNSPSC. The mapping is controlled via partition commodity code map file. So whatever I am showing you on the screen can be achieved via files. Files is much easier to deal with sometimes if you're dealing with a lot of records that needs to be updated. File channel is your best friend. Because from the UI you can do only one record at a time, whereas with files you can just open the CSV file, add bunch of records and load it, and that will basically update all the records in the system that you're sending in the file. The ERP this screen basically provides you the mapping between your ERP commodity codes and UNSPSC commodity codes, and if you have set any particular default accounting information, you could control that too. For example, your ERP code of office materials is mapped to UNSPSC code called automatic labeling systems, and there are some default accounting associated with it. So you can control these things from the UI here. All right. What else? Similarly, you have other manager tabs here. Procure to pay manager, P2P manager is one of the important ones. You can go into the invoice exception types here and control how the invoice exceptions are managed, and what kind of configuration you need to drive for the invoice exception. This is something that you would know more from the business folks or from the functional lead who will help you understand how the invoice exception needs to be modeled and configured. Similarly, you have other P2P configurations such as receiving types based on commodity code or part number. You also have payment terms. You also can view the supplier payment information and all such things. Again, all these things, all the configuration that I'm talking about that you can do as a customer admin can be done via UI, like how we are looking at right now, or it can be done via files. Okay. Let me show you quickly one more thing that you may be dealing as customer admin, are the approval processes. Approval processes, you will learn a lot about approval processes when you collaborate with the functional lead and the business folks. The functional lead will help you understand how to model the approval processes based on your business requirement, and you will see that there may be some configuration related data that needs to be updated into the system, and you may be responsible for it as a customer admin. So if there are any approver helper files involved, then this is the place where you would go in and update the helper files. Okay, so the way to get there is manage, and then click on approval processes. It basically brings up this manage approval processes screen, and then you can search for individual document for which you are trying to control the approval design. And there are these many different approvables in the system. So you have one for budget, cancel invoice, charge reconciliation, contracts, invoice reconciliation, requisition received, and all such things. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back to core administration. One more important thing that you can achieve as a customer admin is that you can go and access the documentation. This is pretty much applicable to all the users, but definitely helps more for the customer admin than for users. You can go into help here and then click on this product documentation, and the product documentation, it will bring up the administrative screen depending upon if you're a customer admin. But you can also look at the user documentation if you want to explore that. And the administrator tab, it has a whole list of different documents that you can find it useful when you're trying to manage the site. The most commonly used ones are administrator and data maintenance fundamentals guide. If you are an SAP customer, then if you're an SAP ERP user, then you will see integrations with the SAP as something that you will find it very useful. But there are other integration documents with PeopleSoft and Oracle as well. So this is a pretty generic site. You need to know what you're looking for, and if in doubt, definitely consult with the technical lead. He would be able to help you out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And the user documents, this is a whole library of documentation for how to use P2P, and it explores or introduces you to many features that P2P comes with. Definitely feel free to use them. If you have any questions, ask me or ask the technical lead or the functional lead, and they will be able to guide you. So that's what I wanted to show you guys. This is a peek into what you can do as a customer admin. There's definitely I didn't cover 100% of it, but I hope as a customer admin, this is a screen that you're going to spend most of the time, and I hope that this helps you a little bit. If you have any questions or any suggestions or any queries, feel free to reach out to me. Here is my contact details. I have my email and my phone number. Once again, my name is Arun, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks again, and I hope you found this you find this session useful. Thank you. Bye bye.